The television courtroom had never witnessed such pure, unfiltered disrespect towards someone who had sacrificed everything for their country. Karen Daniels, a 48-year-old real estate agent who drove a white BMW with vanity plates and wore designer suits like armor, sat in Judge Judy's courtroom with the kind of smug confidence that could only come from years of bulldozing clients without consequence. Across from her sat James Crawford, a 67-year-old retired Marine Corps veteran whose weathered hands trembled slightly as he clutched a folder containing his late wife's photographs and property documents. What happened in the next 3 minutes would become the most viral courtroom moment in internet history, shared over 120 million times across every social media platform imaginable, with the hashtag #RespectOurVeterans trending for 6 consecutive days. But here's what makes this story absolutely insane. Karen didn't just lose her case. She didn't just get embarrassed on national television. What Judge Judy did to her in those 3 minutes was so devastatingly brutal, so righteously furious, that it ended Karen's entire real estate career and made her the most hated woman in America overnight. Before we show you the exact moment when Karen mocked a decorated war veteran to his face and triggered Judge Judy's most legendary takedown ever captured on camera, make sure you hit that like button if you support our veterans and believe that people who disrespect them deserve real consequences. Subscribe so you never miss these explosive courtroom moments where entitled bullies finally meet someone who won't tolerate their behavior. Trust me, what you're about to witness will restore your faith in justice and prove that karma is not only real, but it has perfect timing. Now let me take you inside the courtroom and show you exactly how this whole situation exploded. James Crawford had never wanted to be in a courtroom. After 24 years of service in the United States Marine Corps, including 2 tours in Vietnam and 1 in Desert Storm, he had earned a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star with valor. He had bled for his country, buried friends on foreign soil, and come home with nightmares that still woke him up 3 decades later. His wife Mary had been his anchor through all of it, the woman who held him during the dark nights and celebrated with him during the good days. When Mary passed away 8 months ago from cancer, Jim felt like half of his soul had been ripped away. The only thing left to do was sell the property Mary had inherited from her parents, a modest home in a quiet suburban neighborhood worth approximately $380,000. It was supposed to be simple closure, the final chapter in their love story, a way to honor Mary's memory by handling her affairs with the same integrity and discipline that had defined his military career. That's when Karen Daniels entered his life like a tornado wrapped in Chanel perfume. She had promised premium service for a premium listing, flashed her credentials as a top-producing agent, and convinced Jim that his property would sell quickly under her expert guidance. Jim, who had been trained in the Marines to trust people at their word and honor contracts with absolute commitment, signed the paperwork agreeing to a 6% commission. That meant Karen would receive $22,800 when the property was sold. What Jim didn't know was that he had just become Karen's latest victim in a pattern of predatory behavior targeting elderly clients who didn't know how to fight back against aggressive real estate tactics and legal intimidation. Karen Daniels had barely lifted a finger to earn that $22,000 commission. In the 3 months following the contract signing, she posted exactly 2 photographs of Jim's property on Facebook, missed 4 scheduled open houses without legitimate explanation, and ignored 17 phone calls and 11 emails from Jim asking for updates on the marketing strategy. When Jim finally managed to reach her by showing up at her office unannounced, Karen treated him like an annoying interruption to her busy schedule, barely looking up from her phone as she assured him that premium properties take time to sell and that he needed to be patient. But Jim wasn't stupid. He had started doing his own research, talking to other real estate agents in the area, and discovering that Karen's version of premium service was actually complete negligence that violated multiple professional standards. When he politely requested to terminate their contract so he could work with someone who would actually market his late wife's property, Karen's friendly facade disappeared completely and revealed the predator underneath. Karen didn't just refuse to terminate the contract. She demanded her full commission of $22,800 plus an additional $8,000 in what she called marketing fees, despite having done essentially zero actual marketing. She sent Jim a letter drafted by her attorney, full of legal language designed to intimidate someone living on a fixed military pension of $2,847 per month. The letter threatened litigation, warned about damage to his credit score, and made it clear that Karen Daniels always got paid regardless of whether she actually earned it. For Jim, this $30,000 demand wasn't just a financial catastrophe that would devastate his retirement savings. It was a fundamental betrayal of the trust and integrity that had defined his entire life. He had served his country honorably for 24 years, kept his word in every situation, and expected others to do the same. Karen Daniels represented everything he had fought against, bullies who used power and intimidation to crush people who couldn't fight back. What made Karen truly dangerous wasn't just her negligence or her aggressive collection tactics. It was her complete lack of empathy combined with an inflated sense of superiority that came from years of getting away with predatory behavior. At 48 years old, she had perfected the art of targeting vulnerable clients, particularly elderly homeowners dealing with grief, confusion, or financial stress. She knew exactly which clients would be too intimidated to fight back, too trusting to question her authority, or too overwhelmed by their circumstances to navigate the complaint process with the real estate board. Karen kept detailed files on her targets, noting their financial situations, their emotional vulnerabilities, and their likelihood of mounting an effective legal defense. She had faced 3 previous complaints with the state real estate board, but her expensive attorneys had managed to get each one dismissed or settled quietly before any formal sanctions could be imposed. Karen's confidence as she prepared for her appearance on Judge Judy was absolutely unshakable. She had spent 3 weeks gathering what she believed was an airtight case, printing legal articles from random internet websites, practicing her condescending explanations in front of her bathroom mirror, and selecting the perfect designer outfit that would project success and authority. She told her friends and colleagues that she was going to school this television judge on real estate law, that she would expose Jim Crawford as just another difficult client trying to avoid his contractual obligations, and that her appearance on national television would probably generate excellent publicity for her business. What Karen didn't know was that Judge Judy had already spotted 17 different lies in her initial paperwork before Karen even walked through the courtroom doors, and she was preparing to make an example out of this predatory real estate agent that would echo through television history forever. The Judge Judy courtroom buzzed with its usual electric energy as cameras rolled and the audience settled into their seats, expecting another routine small claims dispute to unfold before their eyes. Production assistants made their final checks while the bailiff took his position near the bench, and Judge Judy reviewed her notes one last time with the focused intensity that had made her a television legend. Nobody in that room had any idea they were about to witness a moment that would define courtroom television for an entire generation. Jim Crawford entered first, wearing a modest gray suit that had probably been purchased decades ago, with a small American flag pin attached to his lapel. His military bearing was still evident despite his 67 years, shoulders back and spine straight as he took his position at the plaintiff's table. He clutched his folder of documents against his chest like a shield, visibly nervous but maintaining the composure that had been drilled into him during 24 years of service. Karen Daniels strutted in moments later like she was walking a runway instead of entering a courtroom, her Chanel suit perfectly tailored and her Louis Vuitton briefcase swinging from her manicured hand. She didn't even glance at Jim as she passed him, treating him with the same dismissive indifference she had shown throughout their entire nightmare business relationship. Judge Judy opened the proceedings with her signature no-nonsense approach, her voice cutting through the courtroom air with surgical precision. She reviewed the basic facts of the case, noting that Jim was suing to recover damages after Karen had failed to market his property while demanding full commission plus additional fees. Jim's opening testimony was quiet and dignified, his voice cracking slightly with emotion as he explained that he was selling his late wife's property and that this was supposed to be a way of honoring her memory and finding some closure after 8 months of grief. He laid out Karen's negligence with specific dates and examples, showing the timeline of ignored phone calls, missed open houses, and broken promises. When he mentioned his military service, it was not with any sense of seeking special treatment or sympathy, but simply as context for his worldview and why keeping one's word mattered so deeply to him. In the Marines, we were taught that integrity means everything, he said simply, his weathered hands smoothing down the papers in front of him. I signed a contract in good faith, and I expected the same in return. Karen's reaction to Jim's testimony was immediate and telling. She rolled her eyes so dramatically that the cameras caught every second of her contempt. She smirked when Jim's voice broke discussing his wife's death, as if his grief was some kind of performance designed to manipulate the court. She shifted in her seat with exaggerated impatience, sighing loudly enough that the microphones picked it up, treating this entire proceeding like an annoying waste of her valuable time. Judge Judy noticed every gesture, every eye roll, every display of disrespect, and her expression began to harden into something that regular viewers recognized as the calm before a devastating storm. When Judge Judy finally gave Karen permission to present her side of the story, Karen didn't wait for the complete invitation before interrupting with her opening statement. Your Honor, this is a very simple case of buyer's remorse, she began, her voice dripping with condescension as she waved her hand dismissively toward Jim. Mr. Crawford signed a binding contract, and now he wants to back out because he doesn't like the reality of real estate timelines. Karen pulled out her folder of internet-printed legal articles with the flourish of someone who believed they were about to drop a devastating bombshell of legal expertise. She began lecturing Judge Judy about contract law, real estate commission structures, and industry standards as if she were educating a child about basic concepts they couldn't possibly understand. "Honestly, I don't see what his personal sob story has to do with contract law," Karen said, referring to Jim's mention of his wife's death with such casual cruelty that several audience members audibly gasped. "This is a business transaction, and emotions don't change the legal obligations both parties agreed to when signatures went on that paperwork." Judge Judy's warning look was unmistakable to everyone except Karen, who was too wrapped up in her own performance to notice that she was lighting fuses on bombs that would soon explode directly in her face. When Jim tried to respond to one of Karen's accusations, she actually talked over him, her voice rising to drown out his attempt to speak. "Please, I'm trying to explain reality here," she said with another exaggerated sigh that made her contempt for this elderly veteran crystal clear to everyone watching. Judge Judy's intervention was swift and sharp. "Miss Daniels, he is allowed to speak in this courtroom. You will wait your turn." Karen's response was to sigh again, louder this time, and mutter "fine," whatever under her breath like a petulant teenager being scolded by a parent she didn't respect. The tension in the courtroom was building towards something unprecedented, something that everyone could feel crackling in the air like electricity before a lightning strike. Judge Judy began questioning Karen about her actual marketing efforts, asking for specific evidence of the premium service she had promised Jim when convincing him to sign that contract. Karen fumbled through her papers, making excuses about market conditions and timing, deflecting every question with practiced ease born from years of avoiding accountability. That's when Jim quietly interjected, his voice steady but filled with the kind of pain that comes from being repeatedly dismissed and disrespected. "Your Honor, I just wanted honest service. In my 24 years in the Marines, we were taught that when you give your word, you keep it. I trusted Miss Daniels to do right by my wife's memory, and instead she treated us like we didn't matter." The moment that would break the internet happened in the space between one heartbeat and the next. Karen actually laughed out loud, a mocking sound that echoed through the silent courtroom like a gunshot. "Oh please," she said, making exaggerated air quotes with her perfectly manicured fingers. "Playing the soldier card? How original. Everyone who can't win an argument suddenly becomes Captain America, trying to guilt-trip people with their service record." She turned slightly toward the camera with a smirk, as if she was sharing an inside joke with America about how predictable and manipulative Jim's mention of military service had been. The courtroom didn't just go silent. It went into some kind of alternate dimension where sound itself seemed afraid to exist. Jim's face registered shock first, then deep hurt, then a controlled anger that came from decades of military discipline preventing him from responding the way every fiber of his being wanted to respond. Audience members sat frozen with their mouths literally hanging open in disbelief. The court officer actually took an instinctive step forward, his protective instincts triggered by witnessing something so fundamentally wrong that it violated every standard of human decency. But the most dramatic transformation happened in Judge Judy herself. Her face hardened into granite, her eyes turned into lasers of pure fury, and when she spoke, her voice dropped to that terrifyingly quiet tone that had made seasoned attorneys break out in cold sweats during her 25 years on the family court bench. "Miss Daniels," Judge Judy began, her voice so quiet and controlled that it was somehow more terrifying than if she had been shouting, "Would you like to repeat what you just said for the record?" Karen, still completely oblivious to the magnitude of her mistake and the volcanic rage building behind Judge Judy's controlled exterior, actually doubled down on her disrespect with the confidence of someone who had never faced real consequences for her behavior. "I said he's playing the soldier card, Your Honor. It's manipulative. People use their military service to get sympathy and avoid accountability all the time. It's a tactic, and frankly, I think it's disrespectful to actual veterans who don't go around constantly reminding everyone about their service." The audacity of Karen Daniels lecturing anyone about respect, particularly respect for veterans, while sitting in a courtroom after months of negligence and predatory behavior, was so breathtaking that even the camera operators seemed to pause in their work. Judge Judy leaned forward in her chair with deliberate slowness, the movement of a predator who had finally decided to stop playing with prey and deliver the killing blow. "The soldier card," Judge Judy repeated, her voice dripping with contempt. "Is that what you call 24 years of military service? 2 tours in Vietnam? Service in Desert Storm? A Purple Heart that means this man bled for his country? A Bronze Star with valor that means he showed extraordinary courage under enemy fire? That's a card to you? Something people play to manipulate real estate agents. Karen's confident expression began to crack around the edges as she finally started to sense that something had gone terribly wrong with her performance, but her arrogance wouldn't let her back down completely. "Well, I just mean that it shouldn't be relevant to a contract dispute," she stammered, her voice losing some of its earlier certainty. Judge Judy's response was to lean back in her chair and ask a question that would begin Karen's systematic destruction. "Tell me, Miss Daniels, what have you sacrificed for this country? What have you given up so that people like Mr. Crawford could have the freedom to serve and come home to pursue the American dream?" Karen's answer was pathetic in its obliviousness. "I pay my taxes," she said, as if contributing money she was legally required to contribute was somehow comparable to bleeding on foreign soil. The scattered laughter from the audience seemed to finally penetrate Karen's bubble of superiority, and the first hints of genuine fear began appearing in her eyes. Judge Judy spent the next several minutes methodically dismantling every aspect of Karen's case with the precision of a surgeon and the ruthlessness of a warrior defending something sacred. She examined Karen's so-called marketing efforts, holding up the evidence of exactly 2 Facebook posts that Karen claimed justified a $22,000 commission. "You want $22,800 for 2 Facebook posts?" Judge Judy asked, her voice heavy with sarcasm. "That's $11,400 per social media post. Most influencers with millions of followers don't charge that much, Miss Daniels." She went through each of the 4 missed open houses, listing the dates and Karen's pathetic excuses for each absence. "Another client needed me. Traffic. No response to Mr. Crawford's calls. A text message 10 minutes after the scheduled start time. This is your premium service? This is what you promised a grieving widower who trusted you with his late wife's property?" Karen tried to interrupt, to make excuses, to deflect blame onto market conditions or Jim's supposedly unrealistic expectations, but Judge Judy cut her off every single time with the authority of someone who had been crushing manipulative liars since before Karen was born. Then Judge Judy did something that shocked everyone in the courtroom by making the case deeply personal in a way that judges rarely do on television. "Miss Daniels, let me tell you something about my father," she said, and the entire courtroom went absolutely silent. "My father was a dentist, a good man who provided for his family and served his community. But before that, before he built his practice and his life, he was a soldier in World War II. He stormed beaches where young men were cut down by machine gun fire before they even made it to the sand. He saw his friends blown apart by artillery shells. He watched boys who should have been going to college dances die screaming for their mothers in languages he couldn't understand. He came home with nightmares that woke him up 3 times a week for 40 years, nightmares where he was back in that hell reliving the worst moments of human history." Judge Judy's voice was getting stronger now, building towards something that everyone knew would be devastating. "My father never asked for special treatment because of his service. He never played the soldier card as you so disgustingly put it. He just wanted the basic respect that any human being deserves, the acknowledgement that he had given something precious and irreplaceable in service to something larger than himself. Jim Crawford is exactly like my father," Judge Judy continued, her gaze boring into Karen with an intensity that made the real estate agent physically shrink in her chair. "He served this country for 24 years. He earned a Purple Heart, which means he bled for your freedom to drive your fancy BMW and wear your designer suits and build your predatory little real estate business. He earned a Bronze Star with Valor, which means he showed extraordinary courage while you were probably worried about whether your hair looked good for your next open house. He sacrificed years of his life, his peace of mind, and his sense of safety so that people like you could sleep securely in your comfortable beds without ever thinking about the cost of that security. And you have the unmitigated gall, the breathtaking audacity, to sit in my courtroom and mock him for mentioning that service?" The courtroom was so silent that the hum of the cameras seemed deafening in comparison to the collective held breath of every person witnessing Judge Judy's fury. Karen Daniels sat frozen in her chair, her earlier confidence completely evaporated and replaced by the dawning horror of someone who had just realized they had made a catastrophic, life-destroying mistake on national television. Her hands were shaking visibly now, her perfectly applied makeup beginning to run as tears formed in her eyes, not tears of genuine remorse but tears of fear and self-pity as she understood that her world was collapsing around her in real time. Judge Judy was not finished delivering the verbal annihilation that would be replayed millions of times across every social media platform for years to come. She stood up from her chair, something she rarely did during proceedings, and the symbolism of that action was not lost on anyone in the courtroom. When Judge Judy stood, it meant something had transcended normal judicial boundaries and entered the realm of moral imperative. Here is my ruling, Miss Daniels, and I want you to listen very carefully because this is going to be a lesson you never forget for the rest of your miserable life, Judge Judy announced, her voice now rising to fill every corner of the courtroom with righteous fury. Not only do you receive zero commission for the nothing you did to earn it, but you will pay Mr. James Crawford $10,000 in damages. $5,000 for breach of contract and failure to perform the services you promised. $5,000 for emotional distress, for targeting a grieving widower, for exploiting his trust, and for adding insult to injury by mocking his military service in my courtroom. Karen's mouth fell open in shock and she tried to stammer out a protest. But that's not fair, Your Honor, I have expenses, I have a business to run, I cannot possibly afford to just give away $10,000 because he got his feelings hurt about a simple business disagreement. The words were barely out of her mouth before Judge Judy unleashed the verbal assault that would become the most viral moment in courtroom television history. Fairness? Judge Judy's voice rose to a thunderous level that made the walls seem to vibrate with her anger. You want to talk to me about fairness? This man served 24 years in the United States Marine Corps so people like you could build your pathetic little real estate empire on the foundation of freedom that he and millions like him paid for with their blood, their trauma, and their sacrifice. He bled on foreign soil while you were worried about your commission checks. He buried friends in unmarked graves while you were picking out your next luxury handbag. He came home with nightmares that will haunt him until the day he dies while you sleep peacefully in your comfortable bed without ever thinking about the cost of that peace. Don't you dare sit in my courtroom and lecture me about fairness when you don't even understand the basic concept of human decency, let alone the meaning of sacrifice. The audience erupted in spontaneous applause, something that rarely happened during active proceedings, but the bailiff made no move to quiet them because even he was caught up in the emotional magnitude of what was happening. Judge Judy pointed directly at Karen with the kind of gesture that would be frozen in screenshots and shared across the internet for years. You are a predator, Miss Daniels. You target vulnerable people, you exploit their grief and confusion, you manipulate them with legal language they don't understand, and then you have the audacity to act offended when someone calls you out on your reprehensible behavior. You saw a widower trying to honor his late wife's memory and you saw dollar signs. You saw someone living on a fixed income and you saw an opportunity to extract maximum profit for minimum effort. You saw a man who believed in honor and keeping one's word and you saw someone you could manipulate with a contract he trusted you to fulfill in good faith. Well, let me tell you something about contracts, Miss Daniels. They require both parties to act in good faith. You didn't. You violated every standard of professional conduct and basic human decency. The gavel came down with the finality of a guillotine blade, the sound echoing through the courtroom like thunder. Case dismissed. Get out of my courtroom, Miss Daniels. And before you go, let me say something to you that I hope haunts you every single day for the rest of your life. Thank you for your service. The sarcasm in Judge Judy's voice as she delivered those final words was so cutting that several audience members actually gasped at the brutal mockery. Karen stumbled out of her chair like someone who had been physically struck, her designer briefcase falling from her shaking hands and spilling papers across the courtroom floor. She tried to speak, tried to mount some kind of defense or appeal, but no words would come out of her mouth. The tears were flowing freely now, running down her face and destroying her carefully applied makeup, leaving dark streaks that made her look like a melting wax figure of her former confident self. She grabbed her belongings with trembling hands and practically ran from the courtroom while the audience gave her a send-off of scattered applause mixed with a few choice comments about respecting veterans. The cameras captured every second of her humiliation, every stumbling step of her exit, every moment of the complete destruction of the arrogant real estate agent who had walked in thinking she would school a television judge and walked out as the most hated woman in America. But the most powerful moment came after Karen had fled the courtroom in disgrace. Jim Crawford stood slowly from his chair, and in a gesture that came from decades of military training and genuine respect for authority that had delivered justice, he came to attention and rendered a crisp salute to Judge Judy. The courtroom went absolutely silent again, but this time it was a reverent silence rather than a shocked one. Judge Judy, who had spent her entire career maintaining professional boundaries and judicial distance, did something unprecedented in her decades on television. She returned the salute. The image of a federal judge saluting a veteran in her courtroom became instantly iconic, shared across social media with captions about respect, honor, and what real justice looks like when someone finally stands up for those who served. The audience rose as one in a standing ovation that lasted for a full minute, and even the hardened court staff who had seen thousands of cases had tears in their eyes witnessing this moment of pure respect between two people who understood the meaning of service and sacrifice. Within 2 hours of the episode airing, the clip had exploded across every social media platform imaginable. Twitter saw the hashtag #RespectOurVeterans reach 2.3 million tweets as users shared the video with comments about finally seeing an entitled person get what they deserved. Facebook recorded 45 million views in the first 24 hours, with thousands of veterans and their families sharing their own stories of being disrespected and thanking Judge Judy for standing up for military service members. TikTok users created over 1,200 reaction videos, with veterans filming themselves watching the clip and breaking down in tears at seeing someone defend their service so passionately. Reddit discussions erupted across 15 different subreddits, analyzing every aspect of the confrontation and praising Judge Judy's righteous fury. The original clip on YouTube hit 120 million views within 1 week, making it the most watched courtroom moment in internet history. Veterans groups nationwide issued statements praising Judge Judy's handling of the case, with several major organizations inviting her to speak at their events. Active duty military members stationed around the world shared the video, commenting that it meant everything to see someone in authority acknowledge the sacrifice that military service represents. The real-world consequences for Karen Daniels were swift and absolutely merciless. Within 48 hours, her real estate license was suspended pending investigation by the State Real Estate Board. That investigation revealed a disturbing pattern of behavior involving 23 elderly clients who had filed similar complaints about negligence, excessive fees, and predatory tactics. Her brokerage terminated her contract immediately, releasing a public statement that they had zero tolerance for agents who exploited vulnerable clients and brought disgrace to the profession. 17 former clients who had been too intimidated to complain before saw the viral video and filed formal complaints, creating a legal nightmare that would haunt Karen for years. Her business Facebook page was flooded with over 47,000 one-star reviews before she finally deleted it entirely. Her personal social media accounts lasted only hours before the harassment forced her to delete them as well. Someone identified her address and posted it online, forcing her to move after her home became a destination for people wanting to confront her in person. Her marriage, already strained by her aggressive business tactics and obsession with money, reportedly fell apart completely when her husband, himself a Navy veteran, saw the video and realized what kind of person he had been married to for 15 years. Jim Crawford's life took a dramatically different trajectory. The property that had been the source of so much stress and heartache sold quickly after the story went viral, with a patriotic buyer offering $40,000 over asking price specifically because he wanted to honor an American hero. A GoFundMe campaign started by viewers who were moved by Jim's story raised over $180,000, which Jim accepted with humble gratitude before donating the majority to veterans charities that support homeless veterans and those struggling with PTSD. He kept enough to secure a comfortable retirement and make some much-needed repairs to his own home. Jim was invited to speak at veterans events across the country, featured in multiple military publications, and received thousands of personal letters from veterans thanking him for representing them with such dignity and grace. His local VFW post named him Member of the Year and created a scholarship in his late wife Mary's name for children of military families. The case became more than just a viral moment. It became a cultural touchstone and a teaching tool. Real estate ethics courses began using the video as an example of how not to treat clients and the consequences of predatory behavior. Multiple states strengthened protections for elderly clients and increased oversight of real estate professionals. Veterans advocacy groups incorporated the clip into awareness campaigns about the ongoing need to respect and support those who served. Several state legislatures proposed what became known as Karen Daniels laws that would impose stricter penalties on professionals who exploited vulnerable clients, particularly veterans and elderly citizens. Judge Judy's moment of standing up for a veteran became a permanent part of her legacy, a reminder that sometimes breaking judicial composure is not only appropriate but morally necessary when basic human decency has been so thoroughly violated. If this story of justice delivered and respect restored moved you, hit that like button right now to show your support for veterans like Jim Crawford who deserve our gratitude and respect. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another moment when entitled bullies face real consequences for their behavior. Comment below with your thoughts about what should happen to professionals who target and exploit veterans. Share this video with someone who needs to see what happens when you disrespect those who sacrificed everything for our freedom. Remember, our veterans gave everything so we could live in freedom and safety. The absolute least we can do is treat them with the basic respect and dignity they earned through their service and sacrifice. Thank you for watching, and never forget that in Judge Judy's courtroom and in life, respect is not optional and neither are the consequences of forgetting that fundamental truth.